This video will demonstrate how to automatically and manually rename reference designators in your design from within the Allegro PCB Editor. We'll first look at the Auto Rename RefDes utility. This is optional. You do not have to run an automatic rename. You don't have to rename your design. But if you want to, there's an automatic tool that will do it. It's in the pull-down sequence, Logic, Auto Rename RefDes Rename. You can rename all your components or certain components. We'll look at renaming all of our components first. You can use your own grid or a default grid. The gridding system is set up so that it knows different cells, so it knows which parts to rename first. This is the RefDes setup form. Top section, left side, layer options. We can rename top layer only, bottom layer, or both. You can tell which layer to start on, top or bottom, and which component origins to use, whether the pin one, the body center, or the symbol origin. This is so it knows which part is higher or lower than the other, to the left, to the right, for the automatic renaming. Below that is the directions for top layer and directions for bottom layer, so you can do horizontal, left to right, downwards, whatever your requirements are. On the top right-hand side, reference designator format. The RefDes prefix says, do I want to give a new reference designator prefix to my parts as I'm renaming them? Star says keep the current prefix. You could type in your own value if you wanted there. Top layer identifier, bottom layer identifier, you can put a string in the reference designator name to identify by this top layer. If you were going to use like U1, U2 and rename it, it would actually be UT1, UT2 for the first two parts on the top side, maybe UB300 when it gets to the bottom side. I'm going to delete that out for this demonstration. Skip characters are used if you're going to do a gridded sequence. Renaming sequence can be sequential or gridded. Preserve current prefixes, that says use the prefixes that came through in the schematic to rename the parts. Item to note here is if you turn preserve current prefixes off and leave RefDes prefix as an asterisk or a star, the new reference designator prefix will be generated based upon the package symbol or your footprint as you defined in your library. It will not use the prefixes that came through in the net list. If you're going to do sequential renaming, RefDes digits specifies how many digits to put in front of the new reference designator number. For one, it would just be U1, U2, U10, and so on. If you put reference designator digits to 2, you'd have U01, U02, U10, U11, and so on. And if you did like 3, it'd be U001, U002, U010, U011, U100, U101, and so on. And the grid-based renaming is the designations that you would use if you're going to use grid-based renaming. So I have this set up the way I want to run it. I'm going to close this form down. I'm just going to hit rename. We can take a look at this. We'll zoom in a little bit closer for clarity's sake. You can see it did U1, U2, U4, U5. So it just went from top to bottom, the numbers I specified, and started renaming things. If we notice over here, this cap is C3, this cap is C4. It's because we come down to the bottom section, I have C1 and C2 down in the bottom here. So there, since I did top first, these are on the top side, it's C1, C2. Then it just picked up after that and renamed the rest of the caps. Let's suppose we want to rename these memory parts up here with a different prefix so I can quickly identify them on my schematic. I'll go into Logic, Auto Rename RefDes, Rename. I don't want to rename all components, so I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to say Attach Property Components. And down the bottom it says Adjust Find Filter, then select element or group of elements. Make sure Components is turned on. Do a right mouse button. I'm going to say Select on Path and just select all these parts. And I want to attach the property called auto_rename to them. Right now, let me go in to my form. I'm not going to preserve my current prefixes, and I want to give them a new prefix, and I'll say MEM. So every one of those reference designators will start with MEM followed by a number, since I'm doing a sequential renaming method. So let me do rename. And if we look up here, you can see that it renamed the parts MEM1, MEM2, MEM3, MEM4, and so on. Let's talk real quickly about manual renaming of reference designators. This is simply just using the edit text command. Select on the piece of text you want to edit, just get a different reference designator. I'm going to say U999. Now you can see on the command line it says refdes has been modified. So that when back annotated to my schematic, that PLCC will now be called U999. Now let's come over as the last exercise to U3. Now type in U999 there. Now I have a potential problem here is that I'm going to have two parts called U999. When I hit the enter key, you can see it says refdes swapped with another component. So if you look at this on the screen, U3 now has been assigned to the PLCC, and U999 is now the DIP that I selected. This concludes the demonstration on how to automatically and manually rename reference designators in your design from within the Allegro PCB Editor.